KBEV would like to welcome Dr. Bregy to this virtual interview. Dr. Bregy is the Beverly Hills Unified School District Superintendent. Dr. Bregy, thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. Thanks for the invite.
Of course. I wanted to chat a little about the district's response to COVID-19, the modernizations around each school campus, and what our district will look like moving forward during the pandemic.
Sure, my pleasure.
So Dr. Bregy, as you know, COVID has been a time for the history books. In a handful of months, we've seen redesigned lifestyles, travel, education, and so much more. Firstly, for those unaware or not watching the board meetings, what firm steps has BHUSD been taking to update the digital instruction, and what would a normal school day look like for an average BHUSD student? And I know this is going to be different for elementary, middle, and high, but what do you think that'll look like?
So I think to answer the first part of your question, we really focused on, there's so many different facets to providing education that you can't get to where you need to get with education unless you have safety. And so we did make that kind of our true north, that no matter whatever option we decided to go, that we had to ensure that we had the safety of students and staff. And so that kind of led us down several paths. We included teachers in on some collaboration to start looking at what are some possible ideas around what instruction could possibly look like. And then we also got some parents involved and some community members involved for the reopening part, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. So the discussions around instruction were really centered around how can we keep a schedule that is as close to what is happening in the classroom as possible. And while that being said, we also had another really big area, and that is the timing, because we didn't know, and we still don't know, when. It's kind of like when you think back to spring. We weren't really sure if it was going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks or till the end of the physical calendar that we were going to be closed. So we weren't really sure. It's very much the same way now. So when we were looking at the instructional models and options, we had to consider that there's going to be a time when we're all going to be back in the classroom. So we had to look to see what does that transition look like? The movement of students in and out of the classroom. And also the option, we had lots of parents say to us that they had a lot of concerns. We had parents that said it doesn't matter if we're going back to physical school or not. I'm not going to send my children back if there's not a vaccine. And so those were two totally different things. While we had some parents that were ready to send their kids back tomorrow, some were saying, look, I'm going to have my child sit out for the year. So we really had to go down this path where we had two different options. And so we needed to prepare for working with our teachers that were day in, day out. And that's the schedule I was just talking about as far as closely mimicking what's happening in the classroom, but virtually. And then also having a full digital curriculum, which is through the ILC or the Independent Learning Center. So that's kind of the route that we went down. Most school districts did very much the same thing that we did. And we made that happen consistently, whether it was elementary school, middle school, or high school. So that's kind of the route that we went down, knowing that the ILC portion was very stable in our decision. That hasn't changed since we started talking about it months ago. The part that's changed is the instructional delivery with students in class with their teachers. And as you know, we started out, we had a hybrid model before Governor Newsom had a plan that kept all LA County schools home.
Yes. Perfect. Moving on. So a number of parents and teachers had voiced their concerns on the spring semester and the online learning 1.0 or 2.0. And how is, the fall semester of this year and the online learning 3.0 going to be different? And what are you looking forward to and seeing the teachers implementing?
That's such a good question. So the teacher in me comes out right away. And I always like to, in my position as superintendent, I always like to put myself back when I was a principal and then when I was also teaching. And back in the spring, if you put yourself back there, I mean, so much has happened since then. I sometimes think that we forget about those experiences. But we had asked teachers just at the spring break time to basically recreate, redesign, and redeliver everything that they were doing.
Yeah.
And so we've never done that before. And so, and I can tell you as a former teacher, I was teaching algebra, geometry, algebra 2, that you can't just, like, in front of the computer right now, I cannot teach an algebra 2 curriculum like this, just talking to you. That doesn't work. And so in the spring, we gave a lot of different options for our teachers and it was Home Learning Plan 2.0, and we gave a lot of different options that teachers could use, whether it was checking in with students, whether it was live instruction, whether it was having videos and having independent work. And there were so many choices that I think that it really became inconsistent. And people really didn't know what to expect. I think that, when I think back to being a teacher, how difficult that would have been for me on a dime over spring break to change what I'm doing. And I think this is the most important thing. We didn't know how long it would be. So even in the beginning, we had told teachers that, this is going to be virtual, but we couldn't even say how long that was going to be, because at that point, school districts around us were not closing. Several in the state of California were not closing. So we kept thinking this may be for like a quarantine period, 10, 14 days, and then we may reopen again. We just didn't know a lot about the virus then. So I think that's the biggest difference is being caught by surprise, but then also not knowing where this is going to go and how long is this going to impact our learning environment. And I don't think any of us really knew. And I think that was the biggest change to what we are in now. And I think that we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about our technology capabilities. I think that we've learned more about collaborating with other people that were really successful in doing something online. And we've provided a lot of time up front to think the what ifs. What if no one would have ever thought that we'd be starting out the school year like this. But there was always something in the back of our minds when we were watching the positive rates of the virus go up. People kept, what's possible? Could that be? Could we start again, not in class? So I think the difference now is that we're better prepared. I think that we've reflected hard. I'm going to just say from my own experience and what I've seen here in our district is our teachers work so incredibly hard. And so, and it's not like you're just done with the day or end of the school year. I know that there's been deep reflection from our staff about what was delivered, how it was delivered, and what they could do better. And I think that we're in a much better place right now as far as the anticipation of what could possibly happen. That I think that it's a mindset, and we're in a different mindset now because this could continue on for quite some time. And I think that's the difference now, is that we have the gift of time to prepare. And I think that what we're working out now with the teachers, with the MOU, that was just, it's a tentative agreement that we just came up with. It's, just in the last couple of days approved by the teachers union, and it's expected to be approved tonight by our Board of Education at 7:15, that there's a clearer definition of what to expect during virtual learning. And so that's the biggest difference. It's more in expectations. It's more in the time that's available to prepare. But a lot of it is just mindset, because I think we're in a different place than we were back in March.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's been really good to see how teachers powered through it and got through something that they've never seen in education. And I'm really looking forward to what fall's going to look like.
Can I also say something else too that I think that we forget? So, even though we're in a leadership retreat right now, and I spent the whole day with our administrators at Horace Mann, and I just got home for this interview. there's a lot that goes on in somebody's home that really isn't shared. I mean, a teacher isn't expected to share what's happening in their families and privately. And I can just tell you, the one thing that I think was overlooked is that our teachers have families, they have lives outside the classroom, and some of our teachers that were delivering their online instruction had personal issues, medical issues that dealt directly with COVID-19, either in their own family or with their parents or grandparents. And it was overlooked when people were upset about something being delivered or not being delivered the right way. And I get it that people can't see into the world that I know about what's happening in our classrooms and our 400 employees, but I do, and I can't share that information. But it is it's something that if people were to step back and think, wow, that's pretty amazing that teacher was able to do something when they were battling their own issues with COVID-19, and you would have never really known it. So I think that's another piece I just wanted to throw out there, is that there's a lot that goes on personally that impacts our profession.
Very true. I know you've mentioned in the past that LA County would have to be off the COVID watch list for 14 days if we get the chance to reopen, which would mean a case rate of less than 150 per 100,000 or an infection rate below 8%. Do you think this is possible to achieve in the coming months, or do you think Los Angeles will remain in lockdown?
Okay, so that's so impressive that you know that, because most of the people I have conversations with don't know that. So that is more than impressive that we're even having this conversation. It's really strange, because I think data is, and I'm a former math teacher, so I love looking at the data and I love looking at trends. And if you look today, August 4th, there is a bit of a downtick in the cases, the positive cases in LA County. But I think if you look at overall trends and forecasts, it doesn't really, it shows it kind of leveling off, but it's the 8% mark, which is only one metric, by the way, and that's to be below 8% in positive cases. And it's a 7-day window, as you know, so it kind of rolls like each day. If you think of it, you have to look at the positive cases. I think it's July 27th is like the rolling date all the way till today, and then it keeps going to one. And so I think if you look at that data, it does show that there's a slight improvement, but I'm a little bit cautious in the fact that, I still see a lot of things that are happening that are of great concern. I live in Beverly Hills, and so it's, I see people out and about on the street not wearing masks, and so it's all human behavior. And so I am a little bit worried, and don't want to fall into just that data of being a little bit of improvement there. And I also want to say too that, that's one metric. They're also looking at by region as well. And so they're looking at the number of hospital beds. They're looking at people that are in ICU, the number of ventilators that are used. So there's a lot of different things. But I will say this, and this may be a bit controversial, but there's a ton of pressure that's happening with Governor Newsom and families in school districts that have greater needs than we do when it comes to childcare. And so when they gave us these metrics that we're going to follow, in order to come off the monitoring list and be off for 14 days, they really haven't defined some of those. So the 8%, that one's a very easy one to define, and we can watch those numbers. But some of the other numbers that are going to be done by region are not fully defined yet. So it'll be a little bit interesting to see how that goes. But it's I think that we're going to be on this list for quite some time.
Yeah. And as we both know, COVID in the last few months has really touched every corner of the globe. But here in our city, as of Sunday, we've had 534 cases and 9 deaths. I wanted to ask, does this speak true to how difficult it would be to reopen schools and ensure the safety of the thousands of students and teachers that work so hard to keep education going?
It does. And I know that people are, there's this point of fatigue And I hear it all the time, and there's a degree of it, fatigue for me too. I'm just sick of it. I live COVID-19 data and, and all the issues surrounding it every day, 24 hours a day. And so there's a lot of people that are they're just kind of sick of it. And there's this fatigue that's set in. But I think that people really need to be careful because we still don't know a lot about the virus. And if you've noticed just in the news lately, that now there's a number of younger children. I mean, I'm talking younger than high school, where now there's studies that are being done that do show that they could be asymptomatic, but they are still carriers of the virus, and these kids are holding it all right in their like nasal area and in their eyes, and so that's just come out recently, and if you think back, even just to a few weeks ago. I mean, people were saying, look, there's low risk. Kids are not carriers. And it's, part of it is because kids aren't really being tested at the same rate as some of the adults. So when people are fatigued and people are, have had enough of COVID-19, I'm watching these studies come in, and that's of great concern. So not only do we have a concern because and this is something that people forget, we absolutely put our students first. But we can't just put our students first. We are an organization that is also led by adults. And so they work hand in hand. So while we do have a majority number of students, we have to think about our staff as well, and our staff coming into the school with our students. And that's why even with a hybrid model, we were trying to develop ways so that teachers had less exposure to the number of students than they would if it was on a daily basis, or some school districts did like a half day. So I think that people need to consider that this is, we need to consider the latest research. Don't turn your mind off to COVID-19 because you're sick of it. We are just now learning a lot of new things about this virus, and we need to stay alert to that because it's already changing. There was we just had a young person in the state of California die from COVID-19. And so I think that there's going to be a little bit of a trend there now that students are being tested and, younger people. So I just, would hope that people, continue to, keep mindful of this latest data instead of saying, I'm just so sick of it, I'm going to wait till it's over. We can't do that. That's certainly not something I can do in my position. I actually have more attention on this than I ever have because now students are part of the equation.
Yeah. And I'm sure, as you know, back in late July, Los Angeles Unified School District Superintendent Austin Buettner decided to, keep his school district, LAUSD, the second largest district in the nation, at home for the beginning of fall. Do you think our district waited too long or waited the right amount of time, seeing as we're smaller and communal and can make more choices for our local community?
I think that's a really fair question. I think that, when we look back, this is the type of thing that a thoughtful and intentional decision needs to be made. And so I think that, you put yourself at risk sometimes when you do something too early, but you also put yourself at risk if you do things too late. However, we wanted to ensure that we did a lot of homework. And, this is, administrators, some teachers that volunteered. We gave up, all vacations, everything to work on this. And I'm glad that we did because, whether the decision came a little bit later or not, and if you think about it, it was actually Governor Newsom that made the final decision that, that we would not be in session at all, even a hybrid model. We were right there on the cusp of making that decision. And so that would have happened the next day or maybe 2 days later at a board meeting on Tuesday, because our board took in all of that information. But I think that we're a small community. And so people really reached out to us. And I will say, I have never in my entire career of over 25 years, I've never had something so polarizing. In fact, there's conflict that follows the type of decisions that I have to make in the superintendency every year, but nothing like this, where the extremes, where you have somebody that's ready to send their kids tomorrow to school with all other kids, all activities, just like it was last February. And then you've got people that have already said, look, I'm sitting out for a year. and I'm not coming back. So don't even think about, not providing my family something because we're out for at least a year. So when you think about those extremes, it makes decision making a lot harder. And the other thing that I'm going to say about that is the last major thing that we did in our school district was reconfiguration, changing from a K-8 model to elementary and then middle school. And the difference there is that was a lot of decision making that was done, but it was planned and it was very intentional when we did reconfiguration. This has been changing every single day. So I don't think that it is at all I think it's a fair critique, but I think at the end of the day that we were really thorough in our decision making. And did parents have to wait a little bit longer to find out? I think they did, but I feel like we did a lot of work up front because what school districts are struggling with now, many that we're not going to go to a hybrid model. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, many were just going to go all virtual. And so, and what's happening now is that with the hybrid model, some of the ones that said, look, we're going to keep having this hybrid model. We'll keep everybody, physically distanced. That they had to then change. And so because we took a little bit longer, we had kind of an A, B, C option depending on where this was going to go. So I think the homework up in advance was better. I think it added some anxiety to families and our students as well. And I feel badly about that. But this is something, you don't want to get this wrong. And so I think at the end of the day, it was something we needed to do to make a really thoughtful decision.
Of course. And moving more into students, the needs of a high schooler or middle schooler is going to be far different to the kindergartners and elementary schoolers who are, in their critical stages of education. What is BHUSD doing to, boost that and make sure they're retaining the information that they're learning?
So, I mean, it's really the magic happens in the classroom, and the magic happens with the relationship between the teacher and the student. Let's be honest. I mean, if teachers that have a positive relationship with their students not only perform better, but even from a social, emotional perspective, they feel that sense of belonging. And so whether you're in second grade or you're a senior, that you still have that connection and feeling with your teachers. So that's why we can't underestimate what our teachers do. I think that what's being developed now with the MOU with our teachers provides more time for two different areas. And that is not only the live instruction and the synchronous piece, so that teachers are and students are working in real time, kind of like how we're talking now, but it also provides this opportunity for teachers to allow other students to be part of the classroom. Governor Newsom's plan also includes a very important piece, and that is that not only is there that live teaching that happens, that daily live interaction between student and teacher, but he also clearly outlines the importance of students being able to see other students. And so that's going to be a big piece of that. What happens live is that providing teachers with the technology so that even if it is a Zoom, it's that we have that opportunity where students can still interact with one another. I can share with you though that is a huge concern of ours is the social emotional perspective with kids. And I know that we're already working with a team of people who are designing very creative ways of living within the COVID world, but also trying to do what they can to for a safe and comfortable and easy transition. Because what's different here than in the fall or in the spring is that we're starting school and many of our students don't know their teachers. And that's a completely different feeling than when it was in the fall, when many of our students and teachers had known each other for many months or for the whole year. So that's a little bit different. So just to give you an example that I know that in our elementary school, many of our teachers are already setting up an opportunity with some of our youngest learners to meet them. And it may be that the kindergarten class is, a teacher has kindergarten students show up one day with their parents, and they're, far away from each other, much more than 6 feet. and this is from our teachers. This is how creative our teachers are, because they're going to be online with somebody that they have no relationship with, they've never met, and yet what a great chance for somebody to be with their parents, some of our youngest learners, and be able to at least see their teacher, like be in a place, maybe it's across from the parking lot, but for them to wave and say, this is a real person. So there's a lot that's happening there. We are working with the Maple Counseling Center. Allie Norman Franks is like the most amazing person in the world for the Norman Aid Center. She's phenomenal and creative. And so she's got, if you haven't had a chance, go see her website. The resources that are available for our students today, I've never seen anything like it. So I think people realize that this has been a missing piece, and we have to start to now get students to realize where this support and where this additional help can be, because it's a big missing piece.
That's awesome. And it's good to hear that those younger kids are going to get a connection, because learning from someone who has that connection is, going to be very important. Now moving more to Los Angeles, I know in our county, we've seen 186,000 cases of COVID-19 over the past 4 months as of recording. Do you think that speaks to how difficult it would be to reopen before the vaccine would be distributed, whenever that may be?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, like I said, living in Beverly Hills and being out and about, because I go into the office every day. And when I see what's happening on some of our streets, people not following some of the basics, like wearing masks, it's really disappointing, because that's what's going to set us back. So, everybody has to feel a responsibility to mitigate the spread. And I can tell you, I will say this is disappointing to me, but in my office every day, I'm watching high school students walk by, sometimes in groups of 6 and 7, walking by, no mask. I have no idea where they're going, but it's, they're together. And so, but it's very frustrating, because it's like, that's the kind of thing that is, it's going to set us back. And I think if you think back even to the spring, when we're closing borders, when we were really starting to tighten up, and we're kind of going the other direction now. Like, things are opening up. Even though some things have closed again, it's still, when you see beaches and you see on the news people having house parties, that's a real concern to me, because I just don't see that this is going to change if human behavior doesn't change.
Yeah. And I know in the months since COVID first hit the United States, we've seen both mask wearing and schools reopening become politicized. There's been, big rallies and even people showing up at our city's mayor's house talking about schools needing to be reopened. What do you have to say to those people who demand so much that their kids return back to the classroom in person? So it's interesting. That's an awesome question, because
Thank you. I'll tell you what doesn't feel good. So, through all the many chat rooms, I had parents that were very upset with me. They put my address out on WhatsApp and, let's go to Dr. Bregy's house. Let's march there. Let's protest there.
Wow.
We want our schools open. And, which I was like, that's fine, because I was at work. So it's like, you could go to my house. But it's, I had some parents that actually then, after they protested, and, it doesn't feel good when you see your name on a sign like that you should resign, because they don't agree with you. That doesn't feel good when you're working, 14, 15 hours a day. Yeah. But I got to tell you, I had one of the parents that actually reached out to me and said, look, I was one of the protesting moms, and, I would like to bring in a few people to meet with you and share our view. And of course, I've never turned down that kind of opportunity. So, in a socially distanced, masked up kind of way, I had 4 different parents in my office, and had a great conversation with them, because each parent, I found out, had a different reason why they wanted schools to be open, all valid, all of them valid.
Of course.
So, but I think one thing that we haven't done, and it's like, is really hear people out, because we had such a good conversation that I think that at the end, we were kind of virtually air hugging after they wanted me fired, and it's because you have to listen to what they have to say, and they actually came up with some really good points for me to then consider, as the data changes and, we bring, a hybrid approach back, they give me some really good ideas to consider. And so, that, you're not going to win everybody over, and that's not my goal to do that, but just hearing them and getting their concerns about, why are they demanding schools to be open? Really enlightening for me. So it's like, that's why I never turn that opportunity down. So to people like that, again, it's reach out to us, talk to us, ask us questions, because, we're a small community, and that's the benefit of having, a small school district.
It's awesome to see you guys put aside your differences. That really warms my heart. Now, moving to the larger issue of vaccine, there's, the U.S. has invested in a number of vaccines, with all the timelines being from January to August of next year. And the U.S. has ensured that 100 million doses will be delivered by the end of December. How do you ensure that everyone gets a dose of the vaccine before coming back to school? And what kind of timeline do you imagine from everyone getting the vaccine to opening the doors? Is that a month process, or could this be a month-long endeavor?
This is going to be years. With a vaccine, and even though there's trials going on, there are a number of people that, there's no 100% assurance. And so, especially with a new vaccine like this. And so there will never be a time where, that we're going to be required to, when something's so new, and that there hasn't been like long-term effects of what happens with the vaccine. And I'm not anti-vaccine at all, but I'm just saying it's a new vaccine, and it's just now going through trials, and from what I hear, very successful. So that's, I'm very optimistic about that. But we're not going to find within this school year a mandate that you have to have. Think about, again, when I said how polarizing this is. There are people that are ready to send their kids back tomorrow with absolutely no vaccine. So it's there as a society, that there's no way that this will be a mandate in such a short amount of time. I can't even imagine this this is going to be going on for years as far as the vaccine is concerned. I do think that there's going to be ways that we can mitigate and move forward, but I do think the vaccine is going to be a very controversial method for many families.
Last question here. So BHUSD has been really lucky to be able to modernize so many of our campuses, with multiple schools, including our own high school, going under not massive, but sizable amounts of construction. Did COVID derail those? And by how long do you think the timeline is affected for at least the main building of the high school to be reopened?
Yeah, another really good question that's relevant. We haven't skipped a beat. So the construction workers are considered to be essential workers for progress, and there you can see them working throughout the city. So it has not in any way been a hindrance. What took a little bit of time is putting together protocols for when people come to work. They're not our employees, but yet they're on our property. So it changes a little bit with what the expectations are. And so, now that the public health order is out, they will have similar health screenings to all of us when we go in. Like every day I have to check in, and I have a series of health screening questions, and I take my temperature and I do all those things. That every vendor, every construction person is doing the same thing. But we're very fortunate that there's been, no change in our timeline for construction.
That's awesome. All right, Dr. Bregy, well, thank you so much for being on this episode of the KBEV Spotlight. It's been so nice to have you and answer all of our questions. And on behalf of the student body of the high school, and I'm sure across our district, we thank you for how hard you're working to ensure that we keep learning throughout this fall. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see all of you in person as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe.
Of course. From KBEV 6, I'm Joshua Katz.